Dia Ditch, Achara. Hello, my friend. Today we're going to be reading chapter 2 of the Changeling's Call, and I want to show you my t-shirts from my website, storiesbygilly.com, and it has an illustration of two of the characters here. And it's such a beautiful day. It's really hot out, but it's a lovely day, so I thought we would read outside. Okay, so this is The Singers of Ballyshannon. It's still a short chapter. It's still a little bit longer than the first one. So let's get into it. Years passed, and Orla's childhood was wonderfully uneventful. She grew from a happy, giggly baby to a curious toddler to a spirited child. She was sweet and loving to her family, but she also had a penchant for playing tricks on people. Connor would go to tend the sheep only to find them all sporting a woolen hat or scarf. Women who came to have tea with Ife would be frightened to fainting when they looked out the window and saw a little ghost in the garden watching them, Orla under a sheet, of course. This was tolerated for a while, until one day her mother went to take a drink of water and found a large, slimy, bulbous-eyed frog in her cup. After that, Orla was spanked soundly whenever she played a prank, until in time she stopped entirely. Her eyes changed from the dark blue of a newborn to a richer blue than her father's eyes. It was a changeable color that could be called purple in some lights. Other than that, though, she was unremarkable looking, even though her father told her frequently that she was the most beautiful lass in the whole of Ireland. She was pretty, but not stunning, and her long dark curls were common, unlike some of the lustrous reds and coppery blondes in town. She was of average height, quickly surpassing her mother's diminutive frame. People really only thought her beautiful when she looked them in the eye and smiled, which she rarely did. Though Aoife and Connor tried to provide a sibling and had planned on having a big family, no more children came. Aoife never told anyone, but she thought this was her fault because of what had happened that night by the hawthorn tree. She was sure that the goddess Brigid had deemed her an undeserving mother and was grateful to have even one child to love. As the years passed, Connor and Aoife made peace with the size of their family, and Aoife thought of that moonlit night seldomly, until it almost seemed to be something she had just imagined doing. Since there were no sons, Orla was closer to her father than one would expect, and those in the village forgave him this behavior because she was all he had. She would follow her father in the field and learn the ways of the shepherd, and when the weather was good for fishing, he would take her to Loch Asaro, and they would sit on the shore for hours telling stories, legends, tales of their ancestors, and tales of their ancestors that were from so long ago it was hard to know if they were fact or fiction. On the rare occasions that they caught a fish, Connor would generally tell Orla it was too wee, and they threw it back. Once they caught a huge salmon, and he reluctantly bludgeoned its head and carried it home to a shocked Aoife. Orla especially loved any stories about the fair folk, which were both wonderful and terrifying. The fairies sounded so wonderful and powerful, living agelessly and eternally in their enchanted realm, that she wondered why they would have wanted to have anything to do with the mundane human world at all. As Orla was learning both domestic skills and how to work outdoors, her parents were also doing their best to put aside a bit of money each year to save up a dowry for her. When Aoife spoke of this, and how someday they would find her an excellent match, and she would leave them to start her own household, Orla just laughed. She had met the young men in town. Half of them were second cousins to her, and the other half were either ugly, stupid, or both. This would always set the two women to arguing, with Aoife calling her daughter a spoiled, unnatural girl, and Orla vehemently asserting that she'd rather die an old maid than marry any of the men she'd ever met. These rows would typically end with Connor making light of the situation and reminding everyone that Orla was only 15 yet, and there was plenty of time for her to meet someone she would gladly give her heart to. And after all, my dear, he would say to Aoife, we will surely miss her when she is gone, and I shouldn't mind if she waited another 10 years. And then the woman couldn't help but laugh, because imagine a woman getting married at the age of 25. Orla's cousin Fionnuala was 25, and she had 7 children already. Though she had no yearning for a suitor, there were several young men in town who tried rather unsuccessfully to win her favor. Even though Orla was not much more than average looking, those few men who had been clever enough to make her laugh had seen those violet blue eyes and that smile, and they were bewitched. She was also known to be a good cook, and it was said that her loaves of bread turned out airy and with a good crust every time. And while she was mostly unremarkable in her looks and ways, there were 2 unusual things about her. One was that she had curiously good luck, or that is to say, she did not have any of the bad luck that would usually mar a person's childhood and adolescence. When she fell out of a tree as a child, she always seemed to land on a soft cushion of ferns or grasses. When the village shook with the coughs of a nasty illness, Orla would bring fresh baked soda bread or mutton stew to her sick neighbors, glowing with health. She never suffered so much as a bee sting or a pimple, in fact. The lack of ill fortune is easily passed over, though, and it was really only her mother who noticed this weird quality in her daughter. Ife never commented on it, and nor did anyone in town. The other strange thing about Orla was her voice. Her normal speaking voice was very pleasant, and those who sought to flatter her called it musical. Though neither of her parents had much musical talent, they taught her what songs they knew, and she had memorized them all by the age of 6. The older she grew, the more lovely her voice became, and the more it had an effect on people. If she sang a sad song, people would come to weeping. If she sang a joyous song, people would grin and get up to dance. In fact, it was singing in front of a crowd and being praised for her skill that helped her to overcome her shyness. In the winter months, when there was little entertainment from traveling performers, the people in town would beg her to come to the small public house and sing for them. Orla was clever with words and began to compose her own songs as well, mostly poetic verses about the beauty of the woods or the sea. In time, word of her songs spread, and people from neighboring villages came to hear her sing. With her permission, they would write down the lyrics and bring the songs back to their own towns. They would usually offer her a few coins, which Ife would take and add to her dowry savings. She fervently hoped that one of the young men who came to hear Orla sing would fall in love with her and ask for her hand. However, whenever one of them did try to become friendly, Orla gave them no encouragement, and they would quickly give up and leave town. One summer day, a traveling act came to Ballyshannon with 3 young men who sang in harmony. The songs were nothing new to Orla, but this was her first time hearing them sung in this way, with the notes melting together like a glorious sunrise. Even at church, everyone sang the same notes of the hymn in unison. As soon as the show came to a close, she knew she had to try this, and ran off toward her friend Moira's house. Orla didn't have very many close friends since she spent most of her time with her parents, but she did have a few young people she was friendly with, and Moira was her dearest friend. "Orla!" Moira was surprised to look up from the cow she was milking to see Orla grinning and out of breath. "What are you up to?" "Moira, I have an idea. I've just been listening to the most beautiful singing act where they all sing different notes at the same time. I want you to try it with me in my songs." "Oh, yes, I've heard of them, but don't you think it would be difficult? I don't think I'm clever enough," she said, laughing and tucking back her long red curls. Moira was 17 and probably the prettiest girl in the village. She was also friendly and kind, so she had her share of young men vying for her attention. Her younger sisters were growing up to be just as pretty, and the next oldest, Grania, was impatient for Moira to choose someone already so that it could be her turn to be married. However, Moira was very much of the same opinion as Orla, that there was nothing exciting about any of the men in Ballyshannon. Orla shook her head earnestly. "You're plenty clever enough, and you can sing the melody, I'll sing the harmony. Come now, it'll be fun. We'll be famous and travel the world." Moira laughed and agreed to give it a go. When Orla was excited about something, she could be very persuasive. But she didn't need to be that persuasive, because Moira was quite fond of Orla and of singing, and she also knew that performing together would earn a fair bit of attention. Moira loved attention, which was another reason she was in no hurry to get married. For the next few weeks, the girls met after their chores and practiced until they had a repertoire of songs that could be sung in 2 parts. When they sang a sad tune called The Way Home for Orla's parents, Connor and Ife sat speechless by the fire for nearly a minute afterward with tears in their eyes. "Girls," Connor finally said, "that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." "Yes," agreed Ife. "You have to sing that in town. Such gifts are meant to be shared." The girls beamed with pride and made plans to wear their best dresses the following evening and perform in the local tavern. Word of the new act spread quickly through town, and there was a larger crowd than usual that evening. The proprietor, an outwardly grumpy but actually quite kind and capable man by the name of O'Reilly, had to recruit even his youngest children to help serve pints of ale and bowls of steaming stew. Both girls were excited and nervous as they stepped onto the very humble wooden platform that served as a stage. They had agreed to sing their 3 best songs, starting with what they sang for Orla's parents, then a happier tune called By Your Side, and then a rather funny one that Orla had cleverly adapted from a children's story about a bird and a fox. However, as the duo finished their 3rd song, the audience was not about to let them leave. Before the girls knew it, an hour had passed and they had gone through their entire repertoire. "Sorry, my loves, that's all we have," Orla said with a grin and signaled Moira to take a bow with her. The audience roared with applause, and both girls were bombarded with admirers armed with flattery and armfuls of freshly picked flowers, much to the dismay of Mrs. O'Reilly, who found all her daffodils gone the next morning. As Orla and her parents walked home, she listened to them go on and on about how great the performance had been and how proud they were. She had told Moira that they would be famous and travel the world, but something in her changed. She realized that hearing her parents' praise was enough for her. She was perfectly happy and wished only for things to stay as they were. All right, that's the end of the chapter. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time for chapter 3.